Evening, everyone. Hey, kittens. Just waiting for people to join. Hiya. We're about to have the legend of Dr. Jess coming in, and she is, I love her. Hang on, let me just find her. 1 minute. Here she is. Now. Jess, where are you? Yay! Hey, gorgeous girl. How you doing?
I'm awesome. How about you?
I'm all right. Your sound, I think it's your sound's a bit funny.
I'm funny. Let me see.
It's not that loud. Can everyone hear her? Hang on. Yeah, I think we're all right. Oh, where have you gone? Where's she gone? Or is that me that's gone? I can never be sure whether it's me that's gone or whether it's Jess that's gone. There she is. Was that you that went or me that went? I don't know. Speak.
How's my sound now?
Okay, better. We're good. It's like the blind leading the blind. You speak. No, I'll speak. You speak. No, you speak. We are joined by the amazing Dr. Jessica O'Reilly. That's the smart name, otherwise known as Sex with Dr. Jess. And literally author of loads of books and TV guru. If you're based in this country, it's the equivalent of This Morning, which is our main TV show. You've got the morning show, isn't it, in Canada? Yeah, the morning show. And what you don't know about anything to do with couples and relationships, no one knows. So it's good to see you again. And it's weird because the last time we saw each other, we were in it's going to sound really poncy, a rooftop bar in downtown Manhattan, having a big glass of wine at the beginning of March with no idea what was about to happen.
Yeah, if you recall, I think it was around March the 5th or 6th, and a small piece of New York had been locked down, and we thought nothing of it at the time. And little did we know that we'd be in the situation we are now. So thank goodness for the digital connection.
Exactly, but also we were really good, and we looked at each other in the hotel bar at about 11 o'clock and went, no, we should probably go to bed. If we had known, it would have been an all-nighter. If we'd known, there's no way.
Pull with the furniture at 4 a.m.
Exactly. But anyway, let's start. Your newest book is The Ultimate Guide to Seduction and Foreplay. So that seems a pretty good place to start, because anything to do with sex starts with seduction and foreplay. And on that front, what are sort of, because people watching can't just suddenly read the entire book. What are the main pointers in it that you think?
So proud of this book. It is the 5th one I've written, and it blows all the others out of the water. And it's because I actually had a writing partner, a co-author, who I should shout out, Marla Renee Stewart. And she is the ultimate seducer. She just has this seductive way about her. And one of the things she came up with, and what we used as the framework for the book, is the seduction learning style. So if you can understand your partner's learning style, are they visual? Are they audio? Are they tactile or kinesthetic? If we can apply sex, it changes the way you approach them. Because some people, you come and give them a massage, and that's exactly what they need. Some people, you give them a massage and it puts them to sleep. Some people, you whisper in their ear, and they're uncomfortable with the audio piece of it. For others like me, the sound of Brandon's voice is it can do anything. It can lift my spirits, it can put me to sleep, it can get me going. And so we start with the seduction learning styles, and then we move into basically ways to keep planting what we call sex seeds throughout the day, throughout the week, throughout the month. Because people think, you can be like a light switch. You're talking about who's getting the groceries, whether the kids are constipated, and then all of a sudden you're like, oh, hello. And that's just not particularly realistic. So we're really looking at ways for busy couples to actually have better sex. And then probably the most important piece in the book has to do with the emotional elements of sex. And this matters regardless of whether you're in a totally casual one-night hookup, or, you know, at a party, or just in bed in the dark with a long-term partner. It's something called your core erotic feeling. And your core erotic feeling is the feeling that you require in order to get in the mood for sex. Do you need to feel loved, relaxed, de-stressed, admired, beautiful, sexy? What is the feeling you require? Because sometimes we'll say like, oh, my partner doesn't know how to come on to me, or they don't approach me or know how to seduce me. But the details of it are often less important or underpinned by the feeling. And then once you figure that out, then you can go to the next level and toy with all the other emotions. When we think about parties, right, what is it that is so exciting about a Killing Kittens party? And you can't bring it down to one thing, because for every person, the emotional experience is different. For some of us, it's about being a voyeur. For some of us, it's about being an exhibitionist. For others, it's about getting dressed up and just being admired, right? Lots of people come to the party just to go home with their own partner after, right? They're just kind of fanning the flame before they get home. For other people, it's the risk. It's the idea of doing something really scary and taboo. And so when we get into the elevated erotic feelings, I think this is the most important conversation you can have with your partner. And in the book, we have all the different questions you go through to just better understand yourself. And I think it's really actually important for people who are thinking about going to a party for the first time or the 50th time.
And on the and in lockdown, because you've probably have you had a lot of clients in lockdown and a lot of couples just coming and just going with, you know, no one's ever been like this before, on top of each other the whole time, and people's desires different and people's drives different and work stress is different. One person might be furloughed and really chilled out, and the other person might be working from home full on, and you know, it's sort of, and on that, what have you found are like sort of the main themes and the main questions that people have been coming to you and asking you in the last few months when it comes to couples?
Right, we're on top of each other 24/7, but not in the good way. And so what couples are looking for is they want to know how to break the monotony, because it's boring, right? We can't do what we used to do. And so I always say that it's just little things every day. Like, can you start your day with 1 minute of physical connection? I like to put my head on my husband's chest and just kind of listen to his heartbeat for a minute. It makes me feel a little connected to him. Or if you are in the middle of your workday, can you break it up with 60 seconds of just physical affection? Maybe they're on a really stressful phone call and you go up from behind and give them a massage. Or maybe you see that they have back-to-back Zoom meetings and you just bring them a coffee, something like that. Can you do twice a day, once in the morning for 60 seconds, once in the middle of the day to break it up? Can you do something to feel close to your partner, to make them feel important? And then at the end of the day, you're more likely to get it on. So that's one thing that people are struggling with, kind of just breaking it up. The other thing is sex itself. We are stressed out. Many people have lost their jobs, or they have financial uncertainty. The kids are all over them. They're homeschooling. There are all these layers of pressure that are killing people's libido. And so we have to find, I think, new and exciting ways to have sex. Are you doing any parties online with Killing Kittens?
Yeah, loads. We and a few people have just like messaged up now saying they're brave. Yeah, they're packing up the courage to come. We've literally from week one of lockdown, we've been doing virtual house parties every single Friday. There's a party, and then after a few weeks, we went into New York time zone, Sydney time zone, and then we're doing about 2 workshops a week as well. So there's about basically there's 3-4 times a week at the moment. There is something going on KK related to kind of, yeah, keep it going, keep the community going and everything. So yeah.
I think that's extra important for people who are brand new to this. Like, I actually think that rather than going to an in-person party, going digitally is the perfect way to introduce something new. You don't even have to be into it. You don't have to love it, but just do it and talk about it with your partner. Yeah, especially if it doesn't appeal to you in the beginning. So yeah, people are they're looking for some excitement. You want to do something interesting. Sex toy sales are skyrocketing. So
aren't they? Yeah, massive.
Fly off the shelves, and some of the ones that are, the ones that are app enabled, like all the blue vibe toys are app enabled.
Oh yeah.
Now people are using them at play parties, but they're digital. So you can wear the vibrator, and if you give me permission, I can control it from my phone.
Clever. We found, as you said, people are using this time and new people. So we've actually found a lot, probably 50% of all the parties we have, the virtual ones we're doing, are new people that's first timers that maybe they might have been a member a while, but they haven't plucked up the courage to buy, come to an actual full-on party, or they've just gone, do you know what? We've heard about it, and how about we just sit on the sofa and attend the party and we can just watch, and a bit of fun on a Friday night. So it's sort of, yeah, we're getting a lot of and we've basically said from week one, after the first one, said this is something that we are going to keep going after we're out, when we eventually are allowed back into, as we say, people are like, oh, we own a gym, we're going to be the last people to reopen, or a nightclub. I'm like, no, wrong audience. You know what I mean? We're going to be the last people to reopen on that front.
This is
hang on, my hot hubby's just bought me a glass of wine, so there you go. That's what you were talking about. Little things.
Well, mine's not home, but it's 4 o'clock. I'm ready.
Yeah, ready for wine. We've had a 5 with 3 kids under 5. We've had a 5 p.m. rule in lockdown to not drink before 5. Otherwise, it's a slippery slope. Let's be honest. And on the coming to a play party, or if say you've sort of had that classic, so it doesn't have to have anything to do with killing games. It's just that. Or you're kind of thinking of what would it be like to have a threesome? What would it be like to bring someone else into this relationship, even if it's sort of a go out, get shit faced as a one-off, or if it's kind of actually, it might be a couple where the girl's thinking more and more that actually they're attracted to girls, but they don't want to leave the husband or the partner, but they have that urge that is there and isn't going anywhere. And what's your advice on broaching the conversation, on bringing it up, and actually just starting the comms on that front?
Yeah, I think in terms of talking about any fantasy, especially that moves away from monogamy, I think one of the best ways is to use popular cultural references. So you see it on TV, you see it, you read it in a book you're reading, and you bring it up from a pop culture perspective. Oh, how did you feel about that scene? What did you think of that interaction? How did that make you feel? That kind of made me, I don't know, excited, or that made me a little uncomfortable. How do you feel about that? So oftentimes it can be easier to talk about scenarios that are depicted in fiction or and then you bridge the conversation to yourself. So that's one way. Another way is to just kind of talk about your dreams, right? So, I had this dream the other night and I'd love to tell you about it, right? Or this fantasy popped into my head. And I think it's important to delineate that you may want to follow through with it, but you may not, right? Not every fantasy you have is one that you necessarily want to pursue in life, in the flesh. And threesomes are an interesting one because they're very common. You brought up like the MFF, like a man and 2 women, but certainly they happen in all permutations. And I'm seeing more and more MF couples bring in a guy as well. And so I think that with threesomes, I have like a whole questionnaire that I give to people so that they can really understand, like, what is it that appeals to you about this fantasy? Or if the partner's feeling less inclined, what doesn't appeal to you? And we dive a little deeper. You say, what are the emotional elements you're hoping to get out of this? What are the physical elements? What are the practical, the relational, maybe spiritual, whatever it may be for you? Why do you want it so badly? Or what turns you on? Now, if you go to your partner, they have every right to say, no, I'm not into that. But I beg people to not say, no way, no how, end of discussion. I beg you instead to say, number one, like, thanks for sharing that with me. Right? Really,
thanks. Correct.
Yeah. And then, I don't feel so inclined toward that, or I feel really uncomfortable with that. But dig a little bit deeper beyond the no into, that makes me feel a little jealous, or I feel a little threatened, or I'm afraid I could feel a little insecure, or I'm nervous about you liking that more than you like this. Like, talk about the actual vulnerabilities that underpin your no, and then you're more likely to kind of arrive at some middle ground. Does it mean that you're going to have a threesome for sure? No, but maybe you can pull some elements out. Maybe you watch threesome porn. Maybe you start talking about threesomes in fantasies. Maybe you join a digital party and watch a threesome, or maybe you go online and have a threesome, or maybe you don't at all, right? You don't have to fulfill every fantasy, but I do think that sexual and issues arise when we feel uncomfortable sharing our fantasies with our partner. Not uncomfortable, okay, we all feel a little uncomfortable, but when we feel stifled or judged, right? So compatibility isn't about wanting the same things or doing the same things. It really is about creating an environment that isn't full of negative judgment, right? That is free from judgment. I mean, from a semantic perspective, of course, there's some judgment, but free from a negative and both being willing to put in a similar amount of effort to find some common ground. Because, I mean, threesome fantasies, for example, are very popular. In terms of sex parties and sex clubs, I'm of the view that I hope everybody at least explores the possibility at some point in their lives, because it is life-changing. I mean, I could not do what I do. With all the reading, I can read all the studies, you can go to school, whatever. It does not compare to going into an environment where you see real live bodies having real live sex, totally unscripted, totally non-directed, doing what feels good for them. You can't learn about that in books. And I don't know if you had the same experience, but for me it was freeing to see all different bodies, different ages, different things they were into, just enjoying for pleasure's sake rather than for performance's sake.
Yeah, because that's the thing. A lot of people have this. You know, we've been doing, going for 15 years, and one of the previous that everyone's just like, oh, you've got to have, it's very black and white. It's, well, you've got to have sex. That's the, and I always go, it's no, you don't at all. And actually, I have loads of friends who say that, who say the same thing initially, and then we might be out having drinks in town. And I'm like, there's a KK party at the road. Let's just go for a drink. And the standing joke is that everyone will walk in and want to go, and they'll go, this is not what I expected. It's literally, that's the line that comes out every single person's mouth. And everyone, I haven't had one person who has turned around, and these are some of my most prudish friends who I think is the most hilarious thing in the world, trying to get them drunk and just to come and see, go, this is really cool. This is, and it's not, they don't want to get involved. They don't want to have sex. It's, they say they meet the nicest, fun, most open-minded people, and it's the vibe and it's the energy, and that's what it's about. And that, and that's the thing, exactly that. It's not about going and having sex a lot of the time. It's that energy and seeing, I see everything, when I do go to the parties, there's always something I've never seen before. And this has been 15 years of a lot of parties. And you just go, and it makes you go, do you know what? It's sort of each their own body, each their own noises, each their own jiggly jangly bits and penis sizes and boobs and whatever. You know what I mean? It's sex.
Yeah, and I tell people too, if it's your first time going to a sex party and you're nervous, don't have sex, please. Plan to go and just feel the vibe, right? Same thing if they come to one of your digital events. You don't have to love it every single time, but it does lead to conversations about what you liked, what you didn't like, what made you feel comfortable, what pushed your boundaries. That's what really makes the difference in a relationship. So yeah, I just think that the opportunity to be in that space can be really life-changing. And it's the way you feel about your body too, right? To see other real bodies deserving of pleasure. So
yeah,
you guys are back in action.
And on the you've touched on jealousy briefly. What would be your tips? Because often you get, people will go, right, I'm really up for this. This is what we're doing, and sometimes it might be, the one that sort of pushed it more, and the feelings of jealousy come up. And what's your tip on basically dealing with jealousy when you don't think you're going to have jealousy, or whether it's even beforehand that's what's stopping you? How would you say handle that?
Well, first of all, we have to make friends with jealousy, right? All emotions are valid emotions, and it doesn't make you less of a person. It doesn't mean that you're more insecure. Security or confidence or self-esteem, those are not static states of being. They're experiences. So we say things like, oh, well, they're insecure. Yeah, we're all insecure. Sometimes we're full of ourselves, which is great. And sometimes we feel insecure, and similarly, we all feel jealous. So the number one thing is naming it, is being able to say to myself, oh, there's something about that that doesn't feel good for me. I feel a little bit jealous. I don't have to necessarily say it out loud, but to be able to admit to that will help you to not feel other things. So for example, sometimes we feel jealous. We see someone that makes us feel jealous or threatened, and instead of owning our own feelings, we lash out at them, right? We get critical of them. We try and tear them down. But if I can just stop and say, yeah, I feel a little jealous, then I can see jealousy as functional. So number one, you name it. Number two, you have to recognize that jealousy can be normative and functional. Jealousy can help us to recognize what we want. In the relationship context, it can help us to recognize what we value. So for example, let's say we're at a party and I see my husband talking to someone, and there's something about the interaction. Maybe I'm threatened by their body language, or maybe it's their aura, or maybe it's the way they look. If I can just say, okay, I feel jealous, I can tell my partner, well, first of all, I can work through it myself and say, well, what are you jealous of, right? Like, what's gonna happen? Do you think because those are a really beautiful pair of tits that he's gonna leave you, right? Is that really what matters in this lifetime? Probably not. But first of all, and then I can go to him and say, you know what, I felt kind of uncomfortable walking in on that conversation. I might say, you know, I felt like you didn't pay attention to me, or I was kind of jealous that you didn't introduce me, or it made me uncomfortable that I felt ignored, right? Jealousy can be tied to these other feelings. And then my partner can offer me reassurance. They can say, oh, I'm so sorry you felt that way. I'm sorry I'm a part of that. I want to offer you reassurance. He might say something like, oh, babe, you have nothing to worry about. I love you so much. I'm sorry, I was just engrossed in the conversation. Next time I'll introduce you, or something like that. So number one, I name it. Number two, I work through it myself. Number three, I can ask for support. I can say, you know what, I was feeling a little bit jealous, instead of pretending I'm not jealous, which is what usually leads to the issues.
Yeah.
As an emotion is not a problem. Jealousy as a reaction, the way we react to jealousy can be problematic, right? I might, start something with that person, or I might start berating that person, or I might accuse my partner of doing something when really it's about my feelings. And guess what? No one is responsible for my feelings. Yes, some people can influence the way I feel, but ultimately I have to take responsibility for that feeling. So I think that if we could just get over that first hump, which is admitting that we're jealous, we'd all be in a way that leads to more fruitful conversations and more intimate.
It's that self-awareness, isn't it? It's that going, feeling the feelings, and instead of reacting, just processing them and going, is that me feeling the feelings? Is that my insecurity? Is that, whereas people are very quick to project and blame whoever it is around it. You looked at it like that, when actually you're just having a bad day and feeling a little bit insecure. And on that front, do you think it's an age thing? Do you think, the older people get in couples, the more the, self-aware, or do you think it's just literally, it's any, whatever?
Yeah, I think it varies from person to person, but I actually think there is some research suggesting that we become less jealous as we get older. And that probably has to do, with being more in touch with who we are. Also, in relationships, getting better at communicating our needs, because there is, and meeting one another's needs, and also recognizing that my partner can't meet all of my needs, right? If there's something I'm looking to feel, I can't turn to them and say, well, I need you to do this. I have to seek other sources of emotional, spiritual, practical, relational fulfillment in my life. So yeah, I think you're right to some degree that with time, we become more aware and open to feelings, and it's cultural too, right? Some cultures are better at admitting vulnerable emotions. Western culture, we tend to be so hung up on being strong and powerful and everything that I think we've forgotten that we're just human. And so sometimes we feel things beyond sad, mad, glad, right? We feel insecure, we feel lonely, we feel unsure, we feel tentative, and we feel conflicted. So sometimes I think this is something interesting we don't talk about a lot, but at these parties or in any environment where you're pushing your sexual or relational boundaries, some days it'll feel like just the most empowering, exciting thing in the world, and other days it might not you. So you have to be aware of that, right? So I'm thinking of a resort that I work at where there's you can have sex in different areas. So it's kind of a similar concept. You're not guaranteed sex, but there's just,
you can. You're allowed without being kicked out.
Exactly. And I've had people come down several times and have a great time. And I've also seen a few times people will like have a meltdown when they arrive because something else is going on in their life. And this is just too upsetting for them right now. So give yourself permission to feel whatever you feel. Like you can go to a Killing Kittens party 8 times and have 8 totally different experiences. And I think that's what makes it exciting.
Yeah, that's the thing. It's like, you know, I don't get involved. People go, yeah, sure, of course you get involved. Every party's different. The vibe's always different. The people are different. And someone asked, actually, do you have to be in a couple just then to come? Not at all. We get, you know, for example, the last big mansion party we did, I think we had about 270 people, of which nearly 80 were single girls or groups of girls that came along. So it's definitely not an all couples. Someone asked a question earlier, so I'll go back to it. On how do you get over the self-consciousness if you suddenly, you know, you're naked and suddenly you think everyone's looking at you, you know?
Well, I think you can look around and see that a bunch of them are naked too. Are looking at you. Most people are looking to admire. The other thing is you don't have to get naked. If you've never been naked around other naked people, I can assure you that in almost every case, once everyone's naked, you actually feel more uncomfortable in clothes. It's kind of a great equalizer where we're not hiding behind brands or labels to do anything you don't want to do, right? Some days I want to be naked, and some days I'm just a lot more comfortable in clothes. And there's kind of no pressure. And at most of these parties, you also have the option to kind of be in the thick of things, or you can find a kind of quiet corner, right? Some of these clubs even have the rooms with doors, right? And so people will enjoy the whole erotic environment and then slip away. So really, you've got to make it work for you and not worry about what anybody else is doing.
Yeah, exactly. And or just hang around, you know, in hours. There's always like a big bar area where actually there's not normally any sex in that area. So a lot of the time I'll walk out of a party and go, I didn't see one naked person because I was just sat chatting to people at the bar. So yeah, they're all different. Now going on to, so, you know, the people having threesome ideas and coming to play parties, but then you get the more, you know, the people who go, actually monogamy isn't for me and I want a completely open relationship, polyamorous, or can you just explain the difference? Because, you know, with polyamorous, open relationship, sort of, it's all one big model to a lot of people.
Well, the bottom line is that every relationship is different. Even every monogamous relationship is not held to the same standard with the same rules. So usually when we talk about polyamory, we talk about people who have multiple loving partners. And even within polyamory, there are lots of different ways that, you know, you can arrange that relationship. So it might be in a V, it might be hierarchical where you have a primary partner and then more secondary or tertiary partners, or you might have more balanced or equal relationships with multiple people. Going to a KK party, for example, doesn't necessarily make you polyamorous. Many people who are, when it comes to the emotional, the practical, the relational side, many people who are monogamous might go and explore areas like KK parties just for the sexual side, right? So for example, some people who identify, and I know that this isn't everyone, but some people might identify as swingers, right? So they only play with other couples or with only other singles, but it's primarily sexual. There might be a friendship element, but they're not looking to get into necessarily a long-term romantic relationship. And so you kind of make it what I know from a lot of couples who go to KK, they would consider themselves monogamous. That's how they define themselves. Yes, sometimes they might be having sex in public. They might be watching other people. They might be interacting and flirting with other people. Sometimes there might even be some sort of like touching on the dance floor. But they still, for, you know, all intents and purposes, they are ultimately in a monogamous relationship, and you know, maybe once every other month they go to one of these parties.
Like bringing a dildo into it, the relationship. That's how they see it. It's like, well, one night we'll play, we'll get a vibrator out. The next night we might just actually use an actual penis at a KK party. That, you know what I mean? It's just.
I love it. It's just the dildo.
Yeah. Dildo or real penis.
Yeah. So, and that dildo never talks back. Never asks for a sandwich, never talks back. So, yeah, there's so many different ways to arrange it. And I think what's most important is that you're talking in detail. Actually, I will say that the book that I've just written, it's called The Ultimate Guide to Seduction and Foreplay, has so many questions and prompts to help you kind of better understand what you want sexually. And it's written from the perspective that it's useful to people who are monogamous as well as people who are consensually non-monogamous or open.
And on the big front, and like when we last saw each other, it was the panel debate was the big orgasm discussion. And on that, there's people don't realize, a lot of people don't realize, men and women, that only 18% of women actually orgasm, cis women, through penetrative sex. And there's that frustration. So when it comes to there's a lot of women out there who go, well, we should be coming through sex, they don't say anything, they don't communicate. Then you have a lot of men who just assume that shagging the old-fashioned way, women will come, and then there's faking orgasms, and there's just this whole big sort of black hole myth of what's real and what's not real. And so what are your tips on that, on broaching and communicating that, what you like in order to get an orgasm, and trying new things and the foreplay involved on that front?
Oh my goodness. Be more demanding. Ask for what you want. Be selfish. Stop trying to be good in bed and just get good. Get what you want. If you're approaching a sensitive topic, I always give this kind of three-prong approach. Start with the positive, make an inquiry, and then make your request. So I might say like, this one time I remember that you put your fingers right there and you were rubbing along the top and it felt so good. So I'm starting with the positive. Then I'm going to something like, is there anything you'd want to try, or anything I can do with my fingers, or just a question. So you're putting it in their court, so you get their feedback, and then you make your request. Oh, I would love if you would, use this toy down on me there, or I'd love if you put your fingers down there when you're behind me, or I would love, just a request as opposed to a complaint. And that works in all areas of the relationship.
I was about to say, that's good in business.
Going really well. I wanted to get your perspective on it, and I would love more of this, and this is why, right? I'm going to want it more, or it makes you so good. The problem is most of us wait until we're frustrated to speak up, and when we do not make requests, we're more likely to make complaints, right? So, a really common one, people say, oh, my partner never kisses me anymore, and so we get frustrated, and we're like, you never kiss me anymore, whereas if I just said, oh, when you kissed me last week, it made me just want more of you, the positive. How did you like it? An inquiry. And then, can we lie in bed tomorrow morning and just make out and see where it leads? Or if you kiss me, can you kiss me like that more, because we'll end up having more sex. That's just a different way of communicating. And yes, we should be asking for what we want. Absolutely. The clitoral body is designed for pleasure. It exists solely for the purpose of orgasm. And it's not an elevator button. You're not just pressing and kissing. You want to be rubbing the lips on the whole outside, because when you rub those lips, you get the internal bulbs of the clitoris, the legs of the clitoris, the internal shafts, none of which you can see on the outside. And it's all
isn't it?
Yeah, it's comprised of erectile tissue, just like the penis. In fact, they're derived from the same tissues. So yes, ask for it, take it, grind, rub, tell them that you don't need a jackhammer. There are people who think that if I go and go and go and go, my partner will finish, and that's not necessarily the case. It's not really about quantity or longevity or the numbers. It's really about what you're doing. And then please take them by the hand. Take their hand and put it where you want it, so that you can show them how it's done. Show and tell.
Well, that's part of the problem, isn't it? There's this, it's a proper you know, the sex has been this old patriarchal kind of, you say sex and it's like the picture instantly to most people is it's a penis and a vagina, and the end of sex is when the man comes. It's, you know what I mean? It's sort of this, and that's part of it, isn't it? I think it's reprogramming, isn't it? It's reprogramming us all, and the messaging that we've been brought up on to go, doesn't matter how long it takes for us to come, and sex is actually, it doesn't have to be a penis and there, it's, you know, it's this whole kind of 3,000 shades of grey.
Yes, yeah, and just kind of refocusing on pleasure, right? Like, why not just do what feels good instead of what we think we should be doing, right? We think we need to arch our back. We think we need to, you know, sit at a certain angle. We think that we need to move like a porn star. Try just moving as your body sees fit. You know, sometimes people will call or write into me from the podcast. Straight guys will say, "Oh, I need your help. My partner, she doesn't know what she's doing. My wife, she's great, but she doesn't know how to ride me. Every time she gets on top, she's always rocking back and forth and rubbing and grinding. She doesn't know what she's doing." And I'm like, "Oh no, she knows exactly what she's doing. She's getting hers. It's the rubbing."
Exactly. It's not about you, buddy.
Like, you want her to chimpanzee up and down, woo woo, but in real life, that may not be what's most pleasurable for her.
Yeah, exactly. If she's going back to that, she's rubbing. Yeah, exactly. So yeah, and on the so going away from that and going back to the situation we're in at the moment, and you know, for us, all the pubs and bars and things all opened last week. Not last week, last Saturday. So everyone's sort of, it's as if everyone's kind of been in hibernation, and they're kind of slowly creeping up this dark tunnel, you know, looking out in the daylight, going, are we coming out? Are we not coming out? Are we, you know what I mean? It's sort of this new kind of, and on that front, you know, we've got a lot of singles, and there's been a lot of anxiety in lockdown, a hell of a lot, and we've seen it in members, and you know, I've seen it in friends, single friends, as much as couple friends. And what's your advice for coming out and going, you know, we're going back in to the dating world, and it's sort of been this, it's been all digital, all virtual. So actually the introverts out there have had a field day, you know what I mean? They've been in their happiest place they've ever been in their lives. Not to have that human, actually, you know, face-to-face interaction. So yeah, advice for people coming back into it now, into the world of dating.
Well, as everybody's in different places, I'll say, like, first of all, kind of follow whatever regulations your local government is telling you to follow. So, like, are you allowed a bubble of 4? Are you allowed a bubble of 10? What are you allowed to do?
It changes daily here.
Pardon?
It changes every day in the UK, so no one has any idea.
Yeah, you want to be mindful of that. But just from the practical side, I think we need to be talking more about what we're comfortable with. One of the things that I'm hoping comes out of COVID is that with COVID, we're talking about safety practices. We're talking about washing hands. We're asking people about status. We're asking strangers how they're feeling. And I wish we would do that more around sex, to destigmatize testing and talking about safer sex, and not just stumbling into it, but actually discussing what we're comfortable with. Because the reality is, some daters now are totally comfortable hooking up physically. Others still want to keep their distance and just have the relational element, but maybe not ready for the physical. And I think that if you aren't aligned on those things right now, maybe you want to put off dating. Because if I'm ready to hop right in and have sex, and you want to still stay 6 feet apart, we might not be a fit right now in terms of what's expected. So if you are meeting first online, use those badges, use those signals. So for example, I know Bumble has different badges depending on what you're willing to do. Like, are you willing to have a virtual date online, right? What are you up for? But ask, you know, what are we going to do? Like, are we going to kiss on the first date? I know that it doesn't sound romantic, but I think we should actually be talking about those things. And I think that is what is going to assuage the anxiety, knowing what the expectations are in the first place. Because, you know, you go for dinner, and like I said, maybe I'm ready to hop in the sack, and you don't even want to shake hands yet. Let's talk about that online first, so that we're not feeling pressure or anxious.
And have you found that in like what's kind of a few that, you know, the biggest questions you've been asked, the anxiety questions you've been asked recently?
Well, people want to know if they can hook up, and the reality is, like here in Toronto, for example, we're only allowed a bubble of 10 people. But that bubble means that those 10 of you don't see anybody else, right? And so for most of us, that means we can't hook up with new partners because they usually have their own friends and family, which would take your bubble to like 20 or 30. So people are really concerned about that. I don't know if you've seen the new New York City public health guidelines where they're telling people to have kinky sex instead of traditional face-to-face sex. In the actually said, try using furniture or a wall to separate you. And I'm like, all I can think of is a glory hole. There's nothing other than a hole in the wall and a penis or lips in that hole. So we're hearing more about that. Certainly, I'm seeing a lot more online hooking up, like the online parties. With your KK parties on the Friday night, are they play parties too?
They are, yes, they're play parties. Obviously, you know, people, we kind of cap it at about 50, 60 screens. So we say 50, 60 households. So that can actually be 100, 120 people if it's like all couples. And it's all masked, and they play like icebreaker games. And we have the pre-party chat groups for kind of 3-4 days beforehand, the same way we do when we have the offline parties. So the chat and the pictures and the videos that go around those groups get pretty fruity, so that by the time it comes to the actual event, within minutes there are some of the screens and couples who are just going for it. So it's a complete mix, and they end up completely full on. And actually, as I said, you get loads of people, complete newbies, but because they're sat on their own beds in the safety of their own home, it's not, you forget that there's other people who might be able to see you. It's It's what?
Can they go into private rooms?
They can go in, not into private rooms where they see each other. They can go into private chat rooms. So you can kind of have private chats amongst screens, and you can pin a screen. So you just have one screen there, and our events are pretty good at kind of pinning screens, muting everyone and pinning the screens that have really loud noises going on. So you get, you know what I mean? You get kind of the sound and the vibe of a KK party, but without, as close as you can possibly get to a KK party.
I think that's what people are most interested in right now. They're looking for these new, novel digital experiences. I know that you're doing it. I know some other brands are doing it, like these online play parties. Folks who will never consider going to an in-person one, that's what I'm hearing about most right now. And then I'm seeing people, there seems to be an uptick in certain people looking for threesomes, because single unicorns are a bit more trusting, is what I'm hearing from a few of them. A little more trusting of couples, because they feel like if they go to women who are single, if they go and date guys, they feel like the guys are dating lots of other people, which puts them more at risk, and they don't trust them as much. But they figure that couples who are hooking up with a single woman, I've only heard from women, of course there are men doing it too, that they are more likely to just be with that one person, which may make sense because a couple may not prioritize always having threesomes. Like, it's kind of a...
Yeah, well, that's the thing. They might have kids, and they might just go, do you know what? It kind of is once every 3 months or something. And it's like, whereas, you know, a single guy who's out there, a certain type of single guy, might well be kind of, you know, I know some in London who literally, I don't think they've been in lockdown at all since day one. It's, you know, there's been a lot like that. And yeah, the only ones I know who've been like that are, a lot of the single guys out there.
That's more threesomes. So the single women are feeling more comfortable with the couples. The couples have the time now because they're not traveling. You know, even though the kids are home, you can still go to a hotel room and whatnot. So that's interesting. Is I wonder if they will have any data on more threesomes during lockdown.
It might be, because actually, you know, we've, as you know, said earlier, a lot of people are communicating more. They're actually looking at each other and going, well, we might have been together 20 years, but they've been like ships and both working, and suddenly you're there going, well, actually, we're now communicating and having proper conversations, and it's something they've both been thinking about, but they've assumed the other person, and they haven't known how to bring it up, and suddenly they can't escape. when they're having these conversations because they're locked down. So yeah, I think we've seen a big increase. We've been seeing a big increase in the messaging. It's like over 300% on the messaging side of the business. And yeah, as soon as we can have the offline parties again, we're not worried at all on no one wanting to come. I think there's going to be a big influx of people that pre-lockdown would never even have thought about it or had the conversation, or they would have just carried on as is. And it's made people actually communicate for the first time, which I think is no bad thing.
Yeah, well, yeah. We're dying to get back to the parties. Even within the first month, people were like, do you know of any parties? They were sending me messages. Like, no, I don't know of any parties. I'm locked in my house.
I know. What did you take? Are you not reading the news? We get messages all the time. When's your next? When are you gonna, start a party again? And you're like, do you watch Sky News, the BBC News, the papers, social distancing? No.
Oh my gosh! Do you know what I saw today? I saw a social distancing strap-on that's like 6 feet long.
So that's hilarious. I thought that a few weeks ago. I thought, when you're thinking, I was thinking, well, how could we get away with that? What possible things? And I just had this crazy vision in my head, which obviously was never going to happen, of literally people having exactly that. Having like, now it's down to a meter social distancing in this country, having like just a meter long strap-ons. So you still keep the meter social distance, but you can have a KK party. But we haven't got there yet. It was just something, I was just lying there coming up with like different visions, and I have this really strong visual of 100 people with all the men with like meter long strap-ons, which who knows.
Wall, the plexiglass wall with like a hole in it, because I'm not an epidemiologist obviously, but the big issue according to New York City Health is the respiratory stuff. So they're saying like if there was a hole down here and the head came down but my head was up here, so you could do something like that. That would make it.
That'd be quite funny, like your full mask, you have the meter long strap on, and then I'm only getting a visual now of like all my kids, like they have these rubbish picker uppers, with the handle, and they squeeze it and the claw goes like that, and it's about a foot long. You make that a meter and put little latex gloves on the end of it, you could have a little fiddler from a meter. I'll stop now. It's never going to happen.
Attaches a standard sex toy, right?
Yes.
So you play with it. I mean, when you think about it, these are things that couples can kind of play with just for breaking the monotony. Do you know what I mean? When you were young and you used to have to sneak around and find a place to have sex in private, and it was kind of hot. And now couples always complain that, the kids are always there. And I'm like, but when you were young and you had to sneak around on your parents, you had fun with it. And now that the kids are there, you treat it like it's a chore. But we could just be more playful with this stuff to begin with.
Yeah, and there's loads of places you can easily kind of hide and have a quick fiddle. We were playing hide and seek. We were actually playing hide and seek last weekend with our three, and me and hubby jumped in the hot tub, and we were like that, and we had about 10 seconds, and he was like full on grope, and then suddenly these heads appeared over the top of the hot tub. I'm like, hiya! So yeah, there's always, there's always little secret hiding places. Yeah, you need a few seconds.
Want to create an obstacle, you'll create an obstacle. But if you want to see it as a challenge, you'll enjoy it. Yeah,
and funny enough, I'm reading a book called The Obstacle Is the Way. It's not a sexual one, it's like a business one, but it's exactly that you look at an obstacle and there's always a way to it. But anyway, back to sex, because that's boring. Just a final one. You do a lot on mindful sex, and that's the whole the sex industry and sex education is very much I've noticed in the last sort of there's my husband, he's actually listening to this chat. Sorry James. I thought you were watching cricket downstairs. Oh yeah. On the mindful sex side of things, explain what that is.
So I have a course online called Mindful Sex, and it's a series of videos that you walk through. And it actually doesn't begin with sex. It just begins with regular mindfulness. So different breathing techniques, like we have the ha breath, just alternate nostril breathing, cloud breathing, wave breathing, visualization, to just bring your mind into the moment. Because people say they're distracted by the kids in the next room, or they're worried about work, or right now anxiety is high. So these mindfulness practices are meant to soothe anxiety, but also just bring you back into your body. And then once we get through that, we move on to mindful touch, which also is not sexual, because most of us really need practice receiving touch. Most of us, especially people, you know, who tune into this, you tend to be givers. You tend to be very generous in bed, but you don't have enough practice receiving touch. So we start with like sensual caresses, a hand caress, a facial caress, then a full body caress with no genitals before we finally move on to the genitals. So by the time you go through the program, you're just feeling more in the moment, more in your body. If you do feel distractions, we ask you to just not judge yourself, right? Just bring it back to the present moment. We do something called sensate focus. We do emotional presence as well, so that you start to recognize how feelings show up in your body. And what we find is just, even if you don't do the program, even if you were to take 5 minutes every morning for the next week and do slow, deep breathing or a body scan when you wake up, you start to feel more connected to your body. You start to experience touch and pleasure differently. I mean, if you've never had like an orgasm that you felt in your fingertips or along your forehead, these are sensations that you can tune into if you decide to be mindful. But if you're busy worried about how you look from behind, if you're busy worried about how you sound, if you're thinking about whether the kids can hear you, it's not just that you're not mindful, but you become mindless in the act, right? And most of us kind of move through life mindlessly. When we eat, we just kind of put it in our mouth. We don't stop and enjoy. Like usually with wine, well, some of us, sometimes, I don't always, but we kind of enjoy the taste a bit more. But you notice the days where you're at a party and maybe you're uncomfortable or you're not having a good time, so you're just drinking faster. You're not really drinking mindfully.
Yeah.
And shifting your perspective to feel pleasure in your body so that you can feel orgasms in your toes, so that you can like feel your head tingle with pleasure instead of just having sex for the sake of one orgasm.
So so basically mindful, and it's as the whole mindful movement, isn't it? It's that every day, you know, we've been told to try and do mindfulness like every day and go for a walk, and it's the app called Headspace, and so it's that just being present in the moment and feeling and the movements and everything. That's the thing, it makes complete sense. So if that's going on, if there's the big mindful movement that's been going on for a few years now in life in general, it should be in sex as well.
Yeah, Dr. Laurie Brotto out of BC here in Canada has done a wealth of research now on the effects of mindful practices on your sex drive, sexual arousal, sexual functioning, orgasm. So many of the issues that have been deemed dysfunctions don't necessarily need psychoanalysis intervention or medication. Mindfulness is also improved outcomes. So if you have low sex drive, if you find that you're mismatched, that some of these mindful exercises can help. So my course, by the way, is at happiercouples.com. So if you're interested in the mindful sex course, actually we should create a promo code for you for Killing Kittens. Well,
yeah, no, we should. We'll do a whole blog on it all, so then we can put it all there. But listen, I've just realised the Instagram cut you off at an hour, and we could talk for hours, and we've got 5 minutes. So I will love you and leave you on that. But I will see you soon when we're allowed to. And so basically it'll be New York and London, and we will not be going to bed at 10 o'clock being good like we were in March. We should have known. We should have done an all-nighter. But
see you. Have a great night.
Bye. See you later. Bye. She was epic. She's very quick to respond to questions. So if anyone has any questions, then just reach out to her. She's Sex with Dr. Jess. And thank you very much for tuning in. And we will be back next Wednesday with another great psychologist, Emma Kenny, who's actually This Morning TV's over here, their resident psychologist. So we're talking dating and everything like that. So I will see you guys soon. See you later.